To the land of the lost. To the land of the
G'day everyone, it's Max, and welcome to my Minecraft Land of the Lost tutorials. Over time, I've been playing my LOTL series and my Iron Man series. I've been asked by my viewers on how I do certain things, or where ideas come from, or even just some general questions, and I'm hoping that these tutorials are for them. So first, a big thanks to my viewers and my subbers for these tutorials are a dedication to them. Credits for today's innovators and inventors of Ethos, DocM77, PearSquirrel, Static, MinecraftAddict, Roboticaust, and many of their viewers who have provided many great instructions to Minecraft, along with Necramar, who is I consider probably one of the fathers of early alpha Redstone tutorials and has provided the map which I'll be using in my tutorials, and to Copern, who provided a great invention of double swing boosters, which before powered rails, that was just a great invention, and I have credits and props to him. These tutorials I do will never be as intense or as great as those mentioned, but I try to design these tutorials around the true beginner who are just starting out in Minecraft, and by laying out circuits and steps in a much larger format than what you'll see in many tutorials. Of course, I'm very impressed by how some of these players can actually make circuits work in just like 1 or 2 blocks. That's definitely not me, but my circuits will be laid out and function so as even new players just jumping into the game and want to design some really cool things will be able to do so, and I can explain it out in a very efficient manner and they can be easily followed. Finally, be sure to check the video notes for all the links to the names mentioned earlier, along with information to different mods, wikis, and forum posts which I may have used during the video in the tutorial. And finally, I want to thank everyone who's been watching all of my series, and including these tutorials, and I hope you find them informative and help you a lot in your worlds. With that, let's have a look to see what I'm doing today. Alright, today's tutorial is based on the actual 3-track switch, and of course there are always 2 things when it comes to track switching that you need to have. First of all, before getting to the switch, you need something to stop in and to actually make a decision, and I have an earlier tutorial that covers that called the SFD, or Stop for Destination track, and basically that allows us to come in from one of our towns or bases or destinations, and you come in and you would temporarily stop here while we made a decision on this track, and then once you made your decision on this track, you would then proceed to go through the switch to the destination of your choice, and the SFD that's on the other side would just propel you and keep you going, and it wouldn't interfere with you. Now today, of course, what we want to do is actually make this 3-track switch. Once you actually get stopped in the SFD block, we need a little time to actually make this switch work properly. And of course, this means that we need several seconds before actually going through the intersection, so this track that we decide whatever direction we want has to remember that decision for 7-8 seconds until we're ready to proceed through it. And so this is where we're going to run off to the proof of concept for making a 3-track switch, and then of course after that we'll actually go ahead and build one. Okay, so here we are on the proof of concept for the 3-track switch. Now this is a bare bones build of the actual 3-track switch working, and so you'll see here we have 3 buttons for all 3 directions, but they all centralize into one core, and that core goes through the ground and into the basement, and then down in the basement all the magic happens where it then takes our decision, makes the choice, and then remembers that choice for several seconds. Now, some people will ask me, well, why don't I have these 3 buttons down here beside me? And you can, but I find that if you do put the buttons on the ground, you need a lot more room underneath the switch for all the extra wiring and buttons to make it all work, because you don't want your button wiring to interfere with your switch track wiring. So this is why I have just a bare bones concept, and when we go to do the actual example, you'll actually see how I've prettied this up some and give you some ideas on how to make your overhead button switching even nicer than what I have. So in this particular case, the other thing here is I do not have SFDs attached to my example, just the actual train track itself. Though the build example I'll do in a minute actually does have SFDs attached to it, so we can test it in the end. I didn't want the SFDs to distract from this part of doing the switch tutorial. So of course, if you need to, be sure to watch the SFD tutorial to learn how to make a stop for destination track. And so now, let's say I'm in my SFD and I'm now ready to decide where I want to go, and by default it's turning right, but let's say I actually want to go to my destination on the left. So I push the button, and this will now turn the track to the left, and it actually remembers this for about 7-8 seconds before switching back to the right, as it just did. Now, how do we make that work? So in this particular case, all 3 of these buttons connect to this central core pillar, and it works its way down into the basement. And I'm just going to fall off here. Just a lot easier to fall off. And down here in the basement, here comes our wiring, and the first thing our wire has to do is it has to switch the track itself. So that is what this piece of wire here does. It just comes around here, up this block, and then connects into this torch. The torch right now is on, so the track is turning right, but when the torch turns off, the track will switch to the left, and that will then begin the process of us going through the track. The second thing we need this to do is, when we've pushed a button, is we need it to remember that decision. So this here, the RS NOR latch, or what I call the memory cell, is a 3x3 concept where it actually keeps power on one side of it or the other, and that's why it's called a memory cell, because it remembers what side is actually remembering the power. And so a 3x3 memory cell is made by 2 cubes on either end of a 3x3 block, and then 2 torches facing towards each other on either side, and then we put in the redstone, and you put the redstone in first where you want power. Now, because when you push the button, after the button gets pushed, there's no power in this line, we wanted this side of the memory cell not to have power, so as we can use the button at any time to change the track. So I put my redstone in on this side first to keep the power on here, but cut the power off here, so as it does not keep that track turned in one direction. When we use the button though, and to demonstrate this, I'm just going to break this line right here for a second. When we push this button, and I have a test button down here just to make this so I don't have to keep running up and down, it will not only switch the track, but it will switch the memory cell to make this side the active side, and this will keep the track turned for as long as we want. So I push the button, the torch goes out, so the track is now turned to the left, but our memory cell is now running power on this side, which is keeping that track to the left as long as we want. Now, the problem with keeping this memory cell on is that by keeping it on forever, we can't use the button again, because the memory cell has never let go of the decision we've made. So yes, we did want it to remember to keep the track turned to the left for us, but as soon as we're through the switch, we want the memory cell to forget what it was doing and go back to being in a rest mode. And that's what our third line does. Our third line here is a set of repeaters on delay timers. And these repeaters on delay timers sooner or later catch up to the memory cell and turns it off. So what we're going to do is we're going to let that run through, and then we're going to give this a shot. So I'm going to push this button. The track is going to change. The memory cell is going to remember it, but at the same time, the repeaters are going to start to count off, and when they get to the end, the memory cell will switch back. So we'll push the button. The track is turned left. This is keeping it left, but here comes our repeaters, and now it goes back to the right. So we put in enough repeaters here for a good 7-second delay, so as we had plenty of time up top to run through the track, and then it could switch itself back. With that, we're now ready to actually build our three-way track switch. And with that, I'll see you all over at the example. Welcome back, and here we are over at our real world example, and of course this is where we actually want to build our actual switch track. So here we have the track in place already, and this one does have the SFD blocks in it, so when we are done with this, we can actually test this out. So we'll actually run a cart down there and we'll actually test it out to see if we can make a decision or not. The only other thing I've done beforehand was I did build the arms for the 3 buttons, and that is because it just saves me a little time here. You'll notice that all 3 arms have repeaters on top before they get into the central connection and then work their way into the ground, and that's because these buttons would be longer than 15 redstone a piece if we didn't have repeaters on the arms before connecting together. And because redstone can only travel 15 blocks before the power runs out, we actually want to put repeaters on these 3 button arms before they get together and then actually run down below. And I'll just make it daytime again. Now we actually run our wire down underground, and of course when we're all done finished building the switch underground, we can come back up top and using our SFDs actually see it all in action. So we're just going to keep going down here. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is really simple, and that is we want to take this line that's running down here and just switch the tracks. So this is a pretty easy one. You just run wire over here, and then of course on top of this we're going to put in a torch. Just like that. And now that track will be permanently turned in one direction. Now, just for testing again, I've put a button on one of the blocks coming down the tower so as I can push it and see the torch go out. So we'll push this test button, and sure enough, the track is switching up top because that torch is now going on and off. But as demonstrated earlier, this button only lasts about 1 second, which isn't long enough for us to get through the switch. So how do we make this longer? Well, this is where now we're going to add our memory cell. And so I will add the memory cell just off a little bit from the actual line here. Now, you want to keep the memory cell pretty close to the where the decision is being held, but at the same time you do want to leave at least 1 space between it and the actual line wire that you're running here. I know people can make it more compact, but I'm not trying to demonstrate how to be really compact. I'm just trying to demonstrate that how to actually do it. So in this particular case, I've made my memory cell relatively close to where the track selection is, and I will power this side because at the moment the track is not powered, and we don't want our memory cell to turn that on to a permanent on state. We actually want to leave it off unless we push a button somewhere. So I've put my redstone down on that side first to create that half of the memory circuit being the on side, and now I will put this half of the memory circuit together creating the off side. Now I will run my off cycle to this actual wire. So now what's going to happen is when I push the button, it's going to turn the track to the other direction and turn our memory cell on, and it will keep this powered the entire time, giving us plenty of time to get through the switch. So we'll push the button. Sure enough, the track light goes out, so that track is now turned, and our memory cell is now remembering that on this side of the cell and is keeping power to that track so as it does not turn the other way until we're ready. Now we need the third and final piece, which of course is sooner or later we need this memory cell to go back to its default state so as that track can turn back. Now to do that, as a quickie side note here, I'm just going to add a red power torch to this side, which basically acts like an interrupt and will turn the memory back to its default state, like so, and then we'll just take that back out. Now we want this side to come back on all by itself. Obviously, after we push the button, we don't have to push another button to switch this back. So this is where the third piece of repeaters comes in, and we're just going to take the line off of this side because there's lots of room over here. Now, keeping in mind that it was about 12 blocks to get down here, so I do have to put another repeater in as soon as I come off of this step. Now, because this side is going to be our delayed repeaters, I could actually take this repeater and use it as part of my setup for delaying the track switch back. Its primary goal, though, is just to make sure I didn't run out of power before I actually got to doing my delayed repeater system. So now we're going to take repeaters and we're going to line them all up here, and we'll do 2 or 3 lines of these. And one more line, I guess. Oh, what the hey, I even got a little bit more, so we'll just take this back in. There we go. So we'll even take that one back out. Alright, so in this case, that's a lot of repeaters. So this is going to give us plenty of time to get through the train switch before it resets itself. So I now want to actually make these as long as possible. So I'm going to take all of these repeaters and I'm going to stretch them out to be 3 blocks long. And just to make this a little easier on myself, I will increase my reach to 15 so I can just stand here and do them all. Alright, so we're going through each row and we're extending that time out, so there's going to be lots of time for us to get through the whole track switch before it goes back. Alright, now we'll actually hook these repeaters all up together. So on this side we'll come around, and then on this side we'll come around, and we need a little more redstone, so we got some here. And on this side we'll come around again. Now finally we'll take this feed and put it into the memory cell. Alright. In fact, I'll just have it hook up here. I kind of like it when it hooks into the corners. When they hook into the sides, sometimes they do real weird things. They're a little finicky that way. So with that, what we'll do is we'll push the button just to reset this line again. And this will take a few seconds before the line gets reset, and then we'll actually do our real test. And it's working its way through the repeaters, and this should reset our memory cell. There we go. So our memory cell is now reset. With the 3 parts in place, I'm going to push the button. The track will switch. The memory cell will keep it switched for a time being, and then our repeaters will slowly make their way through and then release the memory cell, allowing the track to go back to a default state. So we push the button, there goes the track, our memory cell is turned on, and the repeaters are working their way through right now. Here they come, and presto, the memory cell lets go and the track goes back. So now let's head on upstairs and actually give this a real live test. Alright, so we'll grab a cart. So here we are, we're in town number 1, and we're leaving town 1 and we're on our way to a different town. So we're coming into our SFD block, our switch for destination, and of course I'm sitting in the cart and I now decide, you know what, I actually want to go to the town on my left. So in this case I don't even need to switch the track because it's already turned to the left, so I don't need to push the button. All I got to do is just send myself on my way, and away we go, and we would just head right off to town number 2. Now I'm in town number 2, so we'll go back to town 1 and get rid of this rain, like so. Alright, So once again, I'm back in Town 1, and this time though, when we get into the SFD, we're actually going to switch to go to Town 3, which is to the right. So I'm going to scoot on in here, and we are now in the block of the SFD. This time though, we actually want to turn right. So we're going to push this button up here, and then this will give us probably 8 seconds. So I'll just do this for the first test. So this is now turned to the right, and we have a good 8-10 second delay on this thing now. So we would have plenty of time to launch ourselves, go through, and be done with it. And you now notice it's gone back to the left. So this time I'll actually go through with it. I'll actually push the button and send myself on the way, and away we go. And you notice that the other SFD did not interfere with me in any way whatsoever because of that earlier design. So with that, that is a three-way track switch, and you can easily put three-way track switches into your world without any problems whatsoever. Of course, by the combination of using an SFD, or stop for destination track, combined with a delayed repeater switch, you can then actually have single line tracks to multiple destinations without the need of multiple departure lines from each town, which I just think is silly. So in this case, with that is our three-way track switch. Our next experiment will be a little bit bigger though, and that will be the 4-port hub or more switch. And just for fun, we'll take the train back over there again, and I'll push the button to switch the track and launch myself, and we'll actually head on over to what is the first of 3 layers of the 4-port or more hub switch. So in this particular case, this here is part of a multi-lane hub switch where you actually have 3, 4, 5, 10 lines coming off of one destination track. And of course, this is only the first of 2 layers required to make this work. And then of course over there will be our final example, and as it starts to get dark, we will jump in the cart and go have a look-see at the final result of that. And I think I've got the reach to hit that button. Oh, except that I'm not in the right cart, so I've got to wait for the right button here. Alright, now I should go. There we go. And I'll explain about how that all delays around and stuff on another tutorial. But in this particular case, the next tutorial will be a 4-port hub or more switch. And of course, it's a little more intense in the redstone wiring area. So I do want to point out now that even though a 4-port or more hub does look really nice, do not think that you can't do the same thing with 3-point track switches. With a 3-point track switch, you can actually put these in a line and actually have several destinations just like hubs do. So, for example, I could have one over there and then one right beside it, and just make my SFDs double-sided, and then I could just go through the switching process until I get to where I want to go. But if you feel more adventurous for a 4-port or more hub, then of course this is your deal here, where you can actually have multiple destinations, and once again, just by staying in your cart and pushing the button, you can count through and actually launch yourself down the right track, and it's pretty nifty stuff. So until that tutorial, this is Max, signing off.
The land of the Lord.